Hi, it's Lerald, and Blizzard has dropped a ton of blog posts about World of Warcraft Midnight in the wake of their reveal of the new expansion at Gamescom. We've gotten at least a dozen posts in the last week to go over here, and while some of this is just consolidating of information that they already gave out a few weeks ago at that convention, there are some really important clarifications and updates here as well that I was really glad to hear, and I think you will be too. So let's get into it, but first be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Join our Discord as well. We've hit 1,000 members recently and we're still growing, so come join our community. There are a lot of awesome people hanging around, getting hyped for what's coming next. Okay, so we've got posts galore. We've got this big roundup post that kind of encapsulates everything, and I'm just going to kind of run through these. Some of them I'm going to linger on a bit more because they're more interesting. Some of them I'm going to breeze right through. So starting with the thing that both Sunset and I are most excited for, we independently arrived upon this, that would be Devourer Demon Hunter. I'm just going to say exactly what she said, which is, I hope that it can keep up with the tempo of the other Demon Hunter specs. Co-signed. That is ultimately what is so fun about Demon Hunter, both tanking on Demon Hunter and playing a DPS Demon Hunter, is the fact that it's fast. And if this winds up being kind of, well, I just don't think that it's not going to be fast, but it does need to be fast in order to remain fun. And so here we have several examples of different skills that are going to be available to the Devourer Demon Hunter, the first of which, kind of the core thing, is Void Metamorphosis. It's going to be a bit of a different take on being in meta from the other two specs of Demon Hunter, rather than being something that you occasionally trigger, maybe every 20, 30 seconds, or 45 in the case of Vengeance. It's actually going to be more like shifting into whatever Insano form as a Shadow Priest after you reap enough souls. So it does seem like they're still copying over some sort of soul mechanic from Vengeance. You'll be able to shift into Void Metamorphosis, and then it's just a matter of not burning out all your Fury. Once your Fury hits 0, then you drop out of Void Metamorphosis form. And so they have a couple of other skills in here that they're showing off. Void Ray, this sick blue I-beam, which you're apparently going to be able to cast more frequently. I think I-beam is a pretty great skill. Obviously, we both do. And so if we were able to do that even more, and it's purple, that seems pretty good. The fact that it's going to be longer range is very interesting. Then there's this other skill here that they've showed off, the third of 3, Collapsing Star. So we've got a real bare bones description here, right? It's a 2.5 second cast. You throw it out, it does some AoE damage based off of your primary target, so it's not ground targeted. That's fine. And while you're casting it, your Fury Drain is paused. So it seems to get stronger every time you cast it. Like currently the way it's described here is you're just going to be spam casting it. That seems stupid. But yeah, this does seem very like Shadow Priest influenced. We'll have to see more, but obviously that's very exciting. And then there was a bit of a new piece of information that I think conflicted with what they had said at Gamescom, which is that the third hero spec available to Demon Hunters, Annihilator, is going to be shared between Devourer and Vengeance Demon Hunter, which means that Havoc is not going to get a new tree. They're going to stick with Scarred. It's just going to be called Scarred now instead of Felscarred. But they're going to have Scarred and Eldrachi Reaver, and Vengeance is going to have Eldrachi Reaver and Annihilator. So this is a change from the previous plan, which was for Havoc to get Annihilator and for Vengeance to keep Scarred and Eldrachi Reaver. Also, Void Elf Demon Hunter is going to be available, and they did confirm here that this is all going to be part of the Midnight pre-patch, which, I have some thoughts on when that's going to be coming as well. That's something we'll talk about a little later on. Okay, that was a bit of a deep dive. Then we have another thing that was really surprising. Did not see this coming, and that would be an actual unveiling of what the new nameplates and new UI components that they're adding into the base game are going to look like, and they look really good. This is the new nameplates that they're playing around with. Seems like you're going to have some control over where spell names are. I don't see anything related to threat yet, so I'm not totally ready to say like threat plates and plater, you're on watch, but this is really recreating a lot of the functionality that makes some of the more resource intensive add-ons like plater very appealing to players. You've got these buffs, debuffs being shown here, shared CCs being built into the base game. This is great. As I say, all UI elements are subject to change. The biggest change I would like to see is just more support for threat-related stuff, which, that may be in. That may be totally then. Then they show off a very strange image to demonstrate the damage meters. This is the only one that's here, right? This weird image that they're showing off. So you can see in the top corner, sorta, The damage meters basically just look like details or, you know, just any old classic damage meter. They look great, and they're probably gonna be not horribly resource intensive, unlike, you know, add-ons are. So this is a great change. And then similarly, there's going to be built-in boss alerts. So we'll see how much control and how much information you're able to get out of these compared to like DBM, bigwigs, all those kinds of things, weak auras. But the fact that there is information here that's going to be available built into the base game is actually pretty good. You know, then there's some other stuff coming in and just some more control over the cooldown manager. Not something that I use. I use weak auras instead, but you know, we'll see. Going forward, I would love to be able to just use default nameplates. I don't know that's actually going to happen, but that would be great if it were a competitive alternative that is similar in valuable information to things like Plater. That would be pretty great. Now, that's not going to be in 11.2.5. That's definitely going to be in Midnight, but just the ability to track different auras and control that is actually going to be in 11.2.5, which is a bit ahead of schedule. All right, the next couple of things here are just there's going to be some dungeons, and we got some cool images coming out of the dungeons. Like this one seems very yellow. But then, you know, like this dungeon, Mysara Caverns, you know, famous last words, but it looks pretty cool. Then we're also getting information about the new raids. No images though, so we'll just move past that. And then we have some images of the new zones as well. Not going to run through all of that because they've definitely talked about that quite a bit. But the fact that the Eversong Woods and Ghostlands are going to be kind of converged into one single zone is cool. I've always liked the Ghostlands a lot. I think it's nice for them to get a new fresh coat of paint. Zul'Aman is going to be, instead of just a tiny little raid, it's going to be its own standalone city, and this particular image looks pretty rad. And then you have the third zone here, Harandar. This is very Zangarmarsh influenced, which Zangarmarsh is a personal favorite zone of mine. It's kind of cool to go hang out in a place that looks like a modern, non-2005 version of Zangarmarsh, and I think that's what this is going to wind up being. And then we have another Burning Crusade-ish influence zone, at least in name, Voidstorm. You know, kind of think of that as like the purple equivalent of Netherstorm. But actually, if you look around at this, I want to say architecture, that's not the word, geology, whatever, the mountains, this kind of looks a lot like Frostfire Ridge, but again, purple instead of white and blue. But it's extremely cool looking nonetheless. So 4 pretty cool looking zones. Everybody's going to be super happy to go back to Eversong Woods and see that in like a modern HD context. It's going to look really nice. Then we have some real simple stuff, like there's going to be some Yes Chef, there's going to be some combat-oriented stuff to do in every zone. You know, kind of the usual stuff you would expect. And also there's the Haranir, the new race. Again, they showed a couple of new images, but that's sort of it. They didn't really say too much about them. We don't know exactly what their racial bonus is. You know, the only thing that we really learned out of this page here is that just like with Earthen, you'll unlock the ability to make these by doing the level up campaign. I think that was pretty much expected, but now we know that for certain. They're not going to be available in the pre-patch, for example. And we do know that the classes available to them is like a pretty long list. Druid, Hunter, Mage, Monk, Priest, Rogue, Shaman, Warlock, and Warrior. So not Paladin, didn't really figure, but a new Druid race. That's pretty cool. Like I'm actually looking forward to playing one of these guys as a Druid for sure. I'm pretty confident I'm going to be swapping my Druid over to that. Then we also got a bit of news that was another thing that's kind of running ahead of schedule here, at least in my estimation, is that the new leveling experience, this is sort of taking the lore walking concept, the talking and doing the little quest lines with Lore Walker Cho and kind of applying that to all of leveling for new players, is actually going to be coming in patch 11.2.7. This is something I thought would really be more in the pre-patch, or maybe even like 12.1 or 12.0. Whatever, the actual expansion release, but this is going to be a little bit ahead of schedule here. Dropping in 11.2.7, this will be great as they are hyping up their way to Midnight as a way for new players to be able to get back into the game. And like I said, it's going to be very influenced by lore walking. There's going to be the ability to level through Dragonflight up to 70, but you'll actually be able to go do like story mode versions of the different raids. And I think that's good for people who want to get into the story of World of Warcraft, understand what is going on with the lore, because historically a lot of the stories of expansions have been like you do these quests in these zones and then the story concludes in the raid, and if you're just leveling through the expansion years later, you just get like 85% of the story and then no conclusion. So that's not great. So this is just a really good fix to that. And then obviously, yeah, if you're a veteran player, you already know what you're doing. You just skip over it, do Chromie time, blast through Warlords of Draenor zones, and get to max level quickly. Alright, as for new delves, they're new delves. We knew there were going to be new delves. This is a very cool looking zone. It's very purple and blue. I like that. Not a lot else to say though, so let's just move on to the prey system. So the prey system is one of the new outdoor features that's being hyped for Midnight, and we're learning a little bit about it here. One of the main things that we actually learned in this blog post here is a bit of a clarification for something that I was concerned about after the way that they had unveiled it at Gamescom. So the way it'll work is you turn on the prey system by talking to, this guy, Astalor Bloodsworn. I guess he's somewhat well known because of appearing on a Hearthstone card. And also, I think he was the guy who was siphoning Muru back in the Burning Crusade. You know, it's been almost 20 years. Who can remember what he did, what horrible crimes he committed, but yeah, sure. So when you turn on Prey, occasionally when you're out doing world quests, doing stuff in the zones, you will get jumped by NPCs. And this is specifically like tied to discrete activities, as they say. You complete activities, suddenly they'll jump you, you kill them, you get a reward. This means that if you're just like flying to a dungeon or you're just flying around looking at stuff, you're not gonna like suddenly get jumped by random NPCs. Hopefully, as long as it's working correctly. I like to imagine that this is going to interact hilariously with flying world quests, and you'll like fly through a hoop and then a guy will spawn next to you and fall to the ground. I'm sure that that won't happen, but that would be great if it did. There will be 3 difficulty levels, and so the way that they have laid it out here is that when you're just doing the normal basic difficulty level, the NPCs that jump you will be visible to everyone, people who are in your party, not in your party, whatever, and they can help you kill them. Should be nice and easy. When you go up to the higher difficulty levels, initially the way they announced it was going to be one-on-one. So if you're playing a holy priest questing with somebody, you're just going to have to do a duel to the death with, you know, whatever deadly monster. And now it seems like that is not going to be the case. They're going to be visible to your party members. It's going to be you and your party fighting against any NPCs that jump you. So that's obviously an important distinction. And then also there's the clarification, which it seemed like it was going to be the case, but you'll actually be able to get hero track gear from doing this on Nightmare. So this is going to be equivalent to delves, or I mean, you know, getting hero track gear from literally Uber World Quest is like a big old joke that I've been making for ages now, but I am actually very happy about. I love the idea of being able to go do the mythic world quests on a character that I would never take into dungeons and still get like heroic tier. That is hilarious and good. Then we've gotten a big clarification on something that people were definitely confused about with the initial unveiling, and that is the redesign to the Transmog system, and it really does look very good. So what's going to happen in the coming state of Transmog is that Transmog isn't just going to be free. They were very clear about that, but it is going to be saved to sets on your armor slots, rather than say this pair of shoulders is transmog to look like, you know, whatever these red things. You just make it so that the shoulders attached to your character's body all will be that appearance. So if you swap the shoulders in and out, they're going to conform to whatever you have set yourself to be transmogged to. A lot of other games work like this. Path of Exile works like this. That's kind of the one that comes to my mind first. And the thing that's very interesting about this is that you'll be able to unlock multiple outfit slots, and you can switch between them freely, and you don't need a transmog vendor in order to do so. They're actually saved to like action bar slots, so you can manually swap transmogs, like, yeah, I guess in the middle of a pull in Mythic Plus. That sounds pretty good. You're also able to automate it so that your outfits will just automatically switch when you're bouncing around town or going into dungeons or changing specs. They'll swap back and forth, which that is something that already exists. There are a lot of people who want more support for RP and a lot of the more cozy aspects of the game, and those are really happening in the next expansion. And that really all comes to a head with the housing. So they have given us some more information on housing. They've also given us some really good images of housing. They look A lot more varied than I thought they would. There's a lot more freedom to make like different looking, I didn't expect spooky house to be an option, right? But here we are. Graveyard house looks very creepy. I kind of like it. This is more what I was expecting all the houses to look like, right? A nice Warcraft 3 house town area in high definition World of Warcraft style. But ultimately, yeah, I think there's a lot more variety available here. There are clearly some send ups to Warcraft 3, as you can see. A lot of references to classic WoW architecture, or Warcraft universe architecture, I should say, and then also some modern twists as well with this very midnight themed stuff that I gotta say, looks really good. And then they unveiled this Endeavor system, which I can't expand these images, but I can just blow them up and take a look. And so there's going to be these things that pop up every month or so called Endeavors, and they'll apply to the entire neighborhood of houses that you live in. And they're going to be like multi-person tasks. And as you can see, this is like a regular looking neighborhood. Looks nice and simple and clean. And then this is a neighborhood with like a Mechagon Endeavor going on. So ultimately, I think this is pretty cool, right? There's going to be a lot of life. There's going to be kind of a constant sense of a living, breathing world where there are things changing every few weeks, every month. I think that's very nice. All right, so those are all of the recent updates from Blizzard in terms of Midnight. Those are all the things we know for certain are going to be coming in the game. And so now let's do a little bit of reckless speculation about when we think the alpha is going to land, which probably anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks from now. And kind of the timeline on the run up to midnight. Again, this is all speculative, but it's just kind of fun to tease it out a bit. So we did learn from Gamescom that there isn't going to be a season 4 of The War Within, and previously my estimation had been that Midnight was going to land sometime in April. I think that the lack of that, and also them saying specifically that they wanted to come back from Gamescom and get the alpha kind of up and running, which is why it seems like it's probably only a few weeks out rather than, say, 5 months out, which is about what it was with the War Within's announcement to the time of War Within alpha landing. It kind of seems like they're moving the timeline up, which is okay, but it does mean that we're probably going to get patch 11.2.5 later this month, like right around the end of the month, and Legion Remix will land sometime in October, probably, maybe November, but probably mid-October. The alpha will probably be coming around right around that time. We're going to probably get patch 11.2.7 in December. That's going to drop a handful of things, including that leveling rework. And then that means that we're probably going to get the Midnight pre-patch either in late January or early February. That's what I'm estimating is around early February. That is going to give us the Demon Hunter 3rd spec. It's also going to give us housing, which is cool. And that would put Midnight coming around, I think, mid to late March. I think that's pretty realistic. It does mean that they're accelerating the timeline by several months, and that kind of makes sense with them dropping Season 4 of The War Within. There isn't really as much stuff to kind of fill in that gap there, time-wise, if there's no Season 4. I'm actually okay with that. I think a lot of people are ready to just go ahead and get into Midnight, get into housing, get into that 3rd Demon Hunter spec. I know I certainly feel that way. I think we both do. So ultimately, yeah, that does seem like the timeline. It is a little surprising that we didn't get a hard and firm release date on Midnight at Gamescom. That's definitely out of keeping for Blizzard to not just get like any sort of certainty already, but that's how things are going. I could be totally wrong. Maybe I nailed it before and it is going to be in April. Maybe it's even later than that. But yeah, March seems right. Patch 11.2.5 and 2.7 are on the horizon. The Midnight Alpha is probably coming in a few weeks to a month from now, and Midnight is going to be here before we know it. Alright, that's it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and join the Skipping Sleep Studio Discord and become a part of our community. And finally, thank you to all of our channel members. If you want to support us so we can keep making more WoW content, become a channel member, or come boost our Discord and keep our morale up. Thanks for watching. Bye.